Hi, everyone. It's me, Miss McCrone. I'm really excited that you guys are back for day 2. We are still focusing on humans as a species in today's lesson, and we're going to take a really close look at how humans use things that they find in nature to help us survive and kind of live every day. And we call those things natural resources. So our entire lesson today is all about natural resources. And as a reminder, since it is day 2, we're focusing on being able to explain what we've learned. So your guys' kind of goal for yourself should be by the end of this lesson, you can explain to your friends, to your parents, to your neighbors, to your siblings, what it is that you guys have learned today. And then we're going to extend what we learned in 2 different activities. The first activity I have planned is kind of an at-home scavenger hunt for you guys to do. And the second one is an online gizmos lab. Now, the first thing we're going to do is a little bit different. I haven't done this before, but I think it might be a fun thing for us to do today. We know that humans use things that they find in nature, just the same way if an elephant got thirsty, it would go out and look for a river. And the video I showed you guys on day 1 definitely had a lot of things that were not what we think of as from nature. So let's take kind of a second look at this video and talk about it for a little bit. All right, so I definitely saw a lot of things that definitely are from nature. Like I saw tons of trees and mountains and rivers. I saw the beach. I mean, fish your brain if you saw the same things I did. But I definitely saw like cars, and we saw a view of Richmond, all those huge buildings in downtown Richmond. I saw King's Dominion. I saw a giant, what looked like a military ship. I saw, I mean, even Monticello, which I know a lot of us go on field trips if we're in 4th grade to Monticello. So last time I checked, those things don't come from nature. So exactly what do those things have to do with natural resources? And I mean, where did those things come from? Well, to start, It's important to know that all resources somehow come from nature. So when we think about a house, well, usually construction workers start with wood, and wood comes from trees, and trees come from nature. So today's lesson, I want us to really be thinking about all the different examples I give you and how they can be kind of traced back to something we find in nature. And then I also want you to focus on how, as humans, do we use those things? And think really carefully. Is it something that we need to survive? Or is it something that we use but we don't necessarily need? So keep that in mind. So the first thing we're going to do in today's lesson is go over a lot of our vocabulary that we need to know. So the first thing I'm going to share with you guys is a slideshow. And unlike in previous videos where I kind of put the slideshow on full screen, I'm not going to do that today because this is a slideshow that you guys are going to be able to access in your lesson plan. So it's an interactive PowerPoint, which I think is really cool. This is the first time I'm doing this, so I really hope you guys enjoy it. So as you can see, this first slide is just reviewing how exactly you are going to access this document at home. If you, the directions say you first need to go click on File. Oops, let me make sure you can see that. There you go. So you go to File, and then you're going to scroll down to Make a Copy, and you are going to select Entire Presentation. So the directions are right there. Once you've done that, you'll be able to click and move around on this PowerPoint all on your own. So again, our main focus this week is exploring natural resources and how humans, as a species of animal, uses natural resources pretty much every day. So the main 4 vocabulary words that you need to know are natural resources, man-made resources, renewable resources, and non-renewable resources. So 4 words, should be very easy. You guys will get this, no problem. All right, the first thing I want to review is what is the difference between a natural resource and a man-made resource? And I'm sure when I'm explaining this, you're going to be thinking back to that video all about Virginia and all the different things we saw. So a natural resource is something that is found in nature, and it is used or it can be used by people or humans. These resources, so natural resources, help people stay alive, or they make our lives better or easier in some kind of way. A great example would be sunlight, air, water, plants, and animals. These are all things that we need in order to stay alive. But other things like soil, stones, rocks, minerals, and fossil fuels that we can find in the ground, we don't necessarily need to stay alive, but we use them and they definitely make our lives better. And I'll explain a little bit on how they do that in a few minutes. So now, man-made resources, and you can kind of hear it in the name. Natural resources come from nature. Well, a man-made resource is something that is created by humans and cannot be found in nature. So man-made means that humans make it. These things also can be used for improving our lives, making our lives easier and better. They can be used for everyday living, work, or recreation, which means kind of like enjoyment or play. So a great example would be buildings, cars, bridges, and trails. Think of a house. We cannot go out in nature and just find a house to live in. Humans build their own houses. Cars, bikes are the same kind of thing. You can't find them in nature. Instead, we have to create them ourselves. So they are man-made. So let's take a closer look at some of the man-made resources that are available to us right here in Virginia. Again, buildings and homes. If you go to downtown Richmond, you'll see huge buildings, and they're not even really buildings that people live in. They're buildings that people work in. But there's also tons of buildings that provide us services like restaurants. Think of a place like Sky Zone, right? These are buildings that we have created for our enjoyment. Cars and bikes, trucks, things like that help us move around, right? It'd be very, very hard. I know some of you guys walk to school, but imagine if everyone had to walk to school, how far that could be. So we created things like cars, bikes, and buses to help us move around faster. And of course, imagine if we had cars and bikes and buses, but we didn't have roads or bridges or tunnels. It would be very hard for us to move around. So humans have created these things, again, to help make our lives easier. And a lot of the things that we've created may appear like they're from nature. So, for example, a lot of the park trails that we have all around the James River, and a lot of park trails that we have up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, they, again, look like they might be found in nature, but actually humans went in and dug out and kind of put dirt along those trails to make it, again, easier and more enjoyable for us to go out and enjoy all the beautiful scenery that we have here in Virginia. So again, these things all somehow came from nature, but they are man-made. We can't find them in nature, but we took supplies that we do find in nature and we created them. So here are a lot of the natural resources that we find here in Virginia. There are tons of plants. I mean, tons of plants that are grown here in Virginia that we use every day, like apples, peanuts, corn, tobacco. And some of it we don't even use ourselves. Instead, we sell it to other people for money. So a natural resource might be something that we don't use, as in we don't eat it or consume it. Instead, we are giving it to other people. There's tons of animals that live here, and I'm not even just talking about all the beautiful wild animals like black bears and deer and fox and bobcats. I'm talking about just animals that we have living here in Virginia on farms, like cows, chickens, pigs. There's tons of fish and, in the oceans and the bays and the rivers here in Virginia that we fish and then we, again, sell to other people. And probably one of my favorite is the blue crabs that we can find in our Chesapeake Bay. Another great example of natural resources that we need and use would be our trees, right? We don't just rely on trees for oxygen to breathe. We also cut them down and we do use them for lumber and wood. And again, do we need lumber or wood to survive? No, but it definitely makes our lives a lot easier going home and living in a house, right? And finally, there's tons of rocks, stones, and minerals, which sometimes can become metals that we find in the ground here in Virginia. The big one is coal. There's lots of coal in the mountains of Virginia, and we use that. We burn it to create energy. There's limestone, granite, clay, sand, and gravel, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have maybe granite in their house. There could be granite in your schools. And if anyone has a window in their home, well, windows and glass are made out of sand. So those are all natural resources that we use. Here's a great picture just to show you guys, and so you guys have in your lesson, of how many different plants and animals we have here in Virginia. And then also how many awesome different cool rocks and minerals. And as you can see, different metals like iron, what was another really cool one I saw before? Copper and gold that we can actually find here in Virginia in the mountains and in the ground. Now, again, why do we need to know the difference between natural resources and man-made resources? If this entire unit is all about natural resources, then why am I spending all this time showing you the man-made resources that we have? Well, it's really important to know that not just humans in Virginia, but every human on Earth and all humans around the world take the things that we find in nature, so our natural resources, and then we build things or create things, so our man-made resources. So it's really important to remember that even when you pick up your smartphone or a tablet, that parts of that smartphone and tablet all came from nature. Different ways that we combined ingredients that we find in nature to create man-made resources. All right, and the thing is too that this is not a recent thing that's been going on. Humans have kind of always done this, where they take things from nature and we turn it into something man-made. So I know in 3rd grade, you guys learn a lot about the ancient civilizations. You guys learn about ancient Greece and Rome, ancient Egypt, ancient China, and you also learn about the Mali Empire in Africa. And in 4th grade, you learn all about the different American Indians that lived in Virginia. So I think it's really cool to kind of combine science and history and look back at how humans did this even thousands and thousands of years ago. So in ancient China, we have artifacts that show humans taking metal that they found in the ground and turning it into coins. Ancient Egyptians were able to turn wood and different plants into papyrus, which is like paper. Native Americans took trees, so wood and lumber, and they carved boats out. And then ancient Greeks and Romans were known for taking their stone they found all over their country and turning it into these huge buildings. And then because Mali was such a really rich, it was such a rich and powerful empire, they needed lots of places where people could go and trade. And they also took different types of stones and rocks that they found out in nature and turned it into buildings as well. So the only difference is that the way we've used our resources has changed over time. So these are all examples of ancient ways that humans took natural resources and turned them into something man-made. And here's some more recent examples, some more modern examples, right? We don't just use metal and paper for money anymore. We have electronic ways of paying, like debit and credit cards or gift cards. We don't just use paper for reading in books and magazines and newspapers. We also have books that can be read on our phones, on Kindles, things like that. And even all of our buildings that we have, sure, we might use kind of like this house right here. We might still use wood and stone to build things, but you can also go to plenty of cities around the world. Like these 2 pictures are from Singapore, and you can see these crazy, amazing, cool buildings that are being used. And there's lots of different materials being used there, not just wood and stone. So again, humans are taking resources from nature, combining them to create man-made resources. Now, we're going to start focusing on natural resources because, again, even on man-made resources, when we trace it back, they all at some point came from a natural resource. So let's just take a moment and really focus on natural resources. There are 2 types of natural resources. A natural resource can be renewable, or it can be non-renewable. So let's think for a second. If I break this word down, renewable, I can see another word inside of it. So I see kind of my base or root word right here, new, and then I have a prefix, re, and able. So re means to do or again, right? If you redo, rewrite, you're writing again or you're doing again. Able means you're able to do it. So you are able to create something new again. So a natural resource, renewable. And non-renewable, I see another prefix right here, which is non. Non means not. So you're not able to create something new again. So let's take a closer look at what those mean. Non-renewable resources are resources that are easily used up, which means even if we waited a couple years, we wouldn't see those resources appearing back in nature. And that's because these types of resources or these materials that we find in nature, it takes them millions and millions of years to form or to be created. So many non-renewable resources, you may have heard the word fossil fuel. Many non-renewable resources are also known as fossil fuels. So some examples of non-renewable resources that we use is coal, oil, like that turns into gas that we put in our car, and then natural gas, which is a lot of times the type of gas we use on our stoves. These are all resources, again, found in nature, but they take so long to be created. Most coal can be dated back billions and billions of years because they're actually coal is a type of rock that's formed from dead plants and animals kind of being smushed together over time. So it takes a really long time for that to form into a rock, which we call now coal. Um, However, renewable resources are completely different. Renewable resources can be used repeatedly because they won't be all used up. And that's because most renewable resources kind of just naturally replace over time. So that's that renew. They become new again. So think of something like a tree, right? When we cut down a tree, yes, we are now killing that tree, and we're going to have to use the wood for lumber. But we could take the seeds on the tree, like we learned in our plant life cycle, and plant new trees. So it might take a couple years for that tree to grow again. It might even take like 10, 20 years, but eventually we will have a brand new tree and we'll be able to cut it down and use the wood again. So great examples of renewable resources are air, water, solar energy, so from the sun, wind, timber or lumber, which is from a tree, soil, plants, and animals. And the great thing about renewable energies or renewable resources, is that when we do use them for energy, so to power our homes and our cars, they actually don't pollute the air or pollute the water. Unlike non-renewable resources, which are much more likely when they burn up to put chemicals or toxins in the air, and it's actually causing a lot of pollution either in our air or the water. So, renewable resources are definitely a great thing to be using and a great thing to know and be able to identify because they're not going to go away anytime soon. Here's the problem. When we look at all the natural resources that we use, renewable or non-renewable, unfortunately, humans use a lot of non-renewable resources. So that's these ones. Think of every time you get in your car and you have to go to the gas station to refill your car with gas. Well, that's another non-renewable resource. Now multiply that with all the people who live in Richmond who have cars, and all the people who live in Virginia with cars, and then all the people around the world who have cars. And we're all using up the oil. And unfortunately, when it's all gone, it's going to be gone. We're not going to be able to create more of it. So a lot of people want to turn to renewable resources instead, but humans need to be careful. There's a lot of things that can happen with our renewable resources that could cause a lot of damage to the ecosystems and the things that we need. So some examples are overhunting, overfishing, and deforestation. And that's when we use so much of that resource and we use it so quickly. There's not enough time has gone by where it can replenish or it can come back into nature. So a great example is if you cut down an entire forest and you take away all the wood, you may not have given enough time for those seeds to get into the ground and find that perfect spot to grow again. So if you keep cutting down trees before more new trees are able to form and grow, then eventually all the trees will be gone. Another thing would be overfishing. If we catch all the fish in the ocean before any fish can lay other eggs, then eventually all the fish will be gone. So humans do have to be careful. And there's actually a really good example right here in Virginia where we're not overhunting, we're not cutting down too many trees, or we're not overfishing. But if you're like me, one of your my favorite foods is crabs, and I just love eating crabs, but unfortunately, the blue crabs that live here in the Chesapeake Bay are kind of in a little bit of trouble. We're not catching too many of them, but instead we kind of polluted the water in the Chesapeake Bay too much. And now the crabs are dying and their eggs aren't surviving, and we don't see as many blue crabs because of that. But there's some good news, and that is humans are kind of learning from their mistakes. So we're going back, and if you see this example right here, this is a buffalo. At one point, when Americans traveled out west, they saw that there were so many buffalo, and they started to hunt all of them. And we almost killed out every single buffalo that's out west. Well, thankfully, we learned from our mistake and we stopped that. And now buffalo numbers, the population is growing. A lot of communities are trying not to overfish, and a lot of companies that have to cut down trees. For every tree that they cut down, they will plant another tree. Here in Virginia, we're also learning from our mistakes, and a lot of communities all around Virginia are trying to keep their streams and their rivers clean because they know that water will eventually run and is connected to the Chesapeake Bay. And people are trying to clean up the pollution. And right now, we see that the Chesapeake Bay is slowly getting healthier, and our blue crabs are kind of coming back and getting better as well. And there's also a lot of great things going on here in Richmond. So you might actually go to a school that uses a form of renewable energy or a renewable resource. So the following schools all have within the last year gotten solar panels to put on their roof. So when the sun hits the solar panels, it creates energy, and every time you turn on your lights in your classroom or you use a pencil sharpener, you're using the sun's energy and not a type of energy that will eventually pollute the air, which is awesome. So if you go to Huguenot, Lucille Brown, MLK, Blackwell, Reed, Miles Jones, Linwood Holton, Oak Grove, Broad Rock, or Fisher, you guys have solar panels on the roof of your school, and you're helping with kind of clean energy and not using a non-renewable resource that will eventually pollute the air. So great job. All right, so that was a lot of information. So I kind of want to do a quick little review with you guys. I want to show you guys this kind of silly, funny video with Bill Nye. He does a really good job kind of showing you guys the difference between renewable and non-renewable resources. And he also does a great job showing exactly how non-renewable resources are bad for our ecosystem and kind of bad overall for Earth. So pay close attention. And just a couple things to remember while watching this is that humans have needs, right? We need to survive, we need to eat, we need a place to live, and we use our natural resources to help meet those needs. A lot of times humans will take natural resources and turn it into a man-made resource to help our lives and make our lives easier. And then the natural resources that we do use can either be renewable or non-renewable. So keep that in mind as we're watching the video.
Believe it or not, we're using energy faster than we can produce it. And most of the energy that we are using comes from sources. Believe it or not, we're using energy faster than we can produce it. And most of the energy that we are using comes from sources that are stinky, dangerous, and hazardous to the environment and to us. Eventually, we're going to run out. There's got to be a better way. There is!
Renewable energy is brought to you by the future, where air is clean, grass is green, and polar bears have plenty of ice. That's not exactly what I meant.
Energy It does work for us. As heat, it cooks our food and warms our homes, schools, and laboratories. As electricity, it powers our lights and our computers. As chemical bonds in our fuel and batteries, it makes our cars, trains, planes, and this forklift go. Welcome to the Planet Earth Simulator of Science. It's a car. Just go with me on this. Let's say this car represents our planet, the Earth. If you've ever gotten into a car, even on a winter day, you know it gets warm or even hot. In a car, you can usually let some of the heat out by rolling down your windows. Light from the sun passes through the glass, warms the seats, and then the glass in the window reflects heat down back into the car, holding in extra heat. This is why people grow plants in glass greenhouses. You know, very few greenhouses are really greenhouses. So these windows are like the gases in the atmosphere. We call them greenhouse gases. For a very long time, the amount of energy coming in from the sun being held by the atmosphere and going out into space has been about the same. The heat energy has been in balance. But with burning fossil fuels over the last couple hundred years, we've increased the amounts of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. These extra greenhouse gases are trapping a little bit of extra heat. On Earth, we can't roll down the window. The world is getting warmer. This extra heat energy in the atmosphere is changing our weather patterns. We're getting intense heat waves, floods, and rising sea levels. We're seeing changes in whole ecosystems of plants and animals. Take our good friend, the polar bear. Oh, hi, Pete. It's not just affecting you guys. Thousands, if not millions, of plant and animal species around the world are facing extinction because of global warming.
All right, so as you can see from that video with Bill Nye, is that more and more humans are changing our natural resources to man-made resources. And when we do that, unfortunately, those man-made resources like trains, buses, cars, big giant buildings that run on electricity, we need more and more non-renewable resources. And unfortunately, that's causing more and more pollution. So it's really important that you guys, because you're going to grow up eventually and you guys are going to be the ones to change the world, you guys need to know exactly which resources are renewable and which resources are non-renewable so that you guys can make sure that the earth stays protected. Because as Bill said, it's not just humans that are affected by this. We've got the ice caps in the Arctic that are melting, and polar bears no longer have as many habitats and ecosystems to find safety in. And we've got coral reefs that you saw with Dr. Hook last week that are bleaching because the water is getting too warm, which means thousands of fish no longer have a home. So there's lots of problems out there, and it's important to remember that, yes, humans have caused a lot of these problems, but humans are also the solution. We're the ones who can solve the problem. So at this point in our activity, we are going to turn to our PowerPoint again and work on checking if we can explain our answers. Now, I'm not going to do this activity with you. This is an activity you would do on your own. So I'm just going to walk you through the directions and show you exactly what it is you need to do. All right, so from this slide, you guys are going to go on to the next one, which this is where the interactive part of this PowerPoint comes in. So on this screen, you are going to have our 4 vocab words. And I want you guys to identify which of these definitions over here on the side are the correct definition that explains what that word is. So all you have to do is click and drag this box, and you can move it around, okay? And you can just put it in the right spot. When you're done, you can always go and press check, and it'll check your work for you, okay? And the second activity that I want you to do on your own is looking at those non-renewable and renewable resources. So I have a list, a giant list right here of different types of natural resources. You need to tell me which ones are renewable, which ones are non-renewable. Now, I know we went through our activity. I explained all the stuff to you, but a lot of times you might need to go back. Always remember that you do have your definitions all the way up here. We've got examples here. And then we go on natural and to renewable and non-renewable right here. So don't be afraid to go back and review the information to make sure you understand it, because that's what this is all about. Make sure by the end of the day that you can explain what these things are, okay? So once you've done that and you've checked your work, we're going to move on to the open-ended question on our Nearpod. So you're going to get onto Nearpod and you're going to type in this code, which is day2 KWN. And there's only one activity today on Nearpod, and it's really the one that I'm going to look for and I'm going to use in our shout outs for next week. So type in your name. Make sure you spell your name correctly. And again, type in what school you go to. Again, if you don't want to type in your full name and you just want to use your initials, that's fine. Again, I don't want to see your first and last name. I just want to see either your first name or your initials. But definitely tell me what school you're coming from. I want you guys to have a little bit of a little school spirit, show your pride in your school. All right, so there's our first screen, and you're going to click next, and you're going to go on to the open-ended question. So the first thing you are going to do is look around your house, your apartment, your yard, or your neighborhood, or all of them, okay? You can do all four of those things, and find me things that you use a lot throughout your day. So I know maybe the first one I would think of is probably my phone. I always have it with me. It's something that I'm sure a lot of your parents use all the time. If you have your own phone, you might use it as well. Okay, so then think about these things that you use. Find more than one and tell me which of them are natural resources, which ones are man-made resources. Out of reach right now, but I have my water bottle right over there. You got to think, well, what is my water bottle? Is it a natural resource or a man-made resource? What about the water that's in it? Is that natural or man-made? You decide. Okay, so find me lots of things. If this is a huge long list, I would love to see it. You can only find a few things that you use all day. Don't worry about it. What's most important is you telling me if it's a natural resource or a man-made resource. Now, I have a bonus question because this one's going to be a little bit harder because I know a lot of us may not have too many of these examples that we have either in our home or in our neighborhood or in our yard. But if you can find anything that is either a renewable resource or a non-renewable resource, I would love for you to share that with me. And keep in mind, it may not be something that you use. It could be something that your family uses or your grandma uses whenever she comes to visit, or a friend uses whenever they come over to their house, okay? It doesn't always have to be exactly something you use. It could be something that you see a human using all the time, okay? Tell me if they are using a renewable or a non-renewable resource. All right, when you're done, don't forget to press submit. If you don't press submit, I won't be able to see your answers, okay? All right, from here, again, that's how you know you're at the end of the Nearpod. And from here, we're gonna go into the gizmos, okay? So if you remember, the gizmos has two things. It has the actual online lab, and then it has the student exploration sheet, which is linked into your lesson plan. So let's take a look. We are going to log in. And remember, it may not take you directly to this correct screen. So we are working on the energy conversions gizmo this week, energy conversions. If you don't see that gizmos when you log in, which you're going to have to log in through Clever, you go to the search bar. Okay, so let's take a look at what that looks like again. Right, this is usually the home screen, and then you're going to have to press Find Gizmos. So we go to Energy, whoops, Conversion. See how this one says in a system? We're not doing that one. Too long of a title. We're doing the second one, just energy conversions. Okay, boom, we're going to launch our gizmo. Look at this pretty little landscape we've got going on here. So I already can observe a lot of things going on. I see a lot of the things that we've been talking about, both natural resources, man-made resources. I see some things here that could be renewable, some things that might be non-renewable resources. So I think already I can kind of see where this lesson is going to go. So let's take a look at what it is that you're going to do with this gizmo. Okay. So you're going to go to your student exploration sheet. It should look like this. And we're going to read our introduction together first. So it says, over 80% of our energy comes from the burning of fossil fuels, such as oil, gas, and coal. Fossil fuels are fairly cheap and plentiful, but there are several problems. Fossil fuels are non-renewable resources, which means there is a limited supply. Once the world runs out, there's no way to get more. Burning fossil fuel adds carbon dioxide to the air. Most scientists agree that this causes the gradual warming of Earth's climate, or global warming. Okay, so that was our intro to our gizmo. Question. So again, this is our overall question that we're going to be asking for this online lab. What types of energy do not harm our environment? So if you think back to the beginning and what I talked about on day one, humans are a type of animal, which means humans have basic needs. We have ecosystems that we live in around the world, and we use things we find in nature to meet those needs. And we call those things natural resources. So when we turn natural resources into energy, we have to make sure it's a type of energy that doesn't harm the ecosystem or harm the environment. Now, number one says describe four examples of renewable resources are featured in the energy conversions gizmo. These resources are produced all the time, so they will not run out. Read about each energy source and then explain how each is produced in your own words. So the first one we're going to go to says A, wind power. So let's take a look at the gizmos right here. Okay, so you can kind of click around. I see that's not the right one. That's not the right one. Oops, that's not the right one. Ooh, wind turbine. And you start to see how the gizmo changes and it starts to move around. It shows you how it's being used. And you can read all about the gizmo right here. If that's too small for you, a great way to make your screen bigger is you press this button, full screen. So read, tell me about this wind turbine. I want you to fill it in on your gizmo, okay? On your student observation sheet. Okay, so type in right here what it is that a wind turbine does and how it gives us renewable energy. Okay, so non-renewable, something that will go away. How does it give us renewable energy? So you're going to click through. There's lots of different ones here that you can click on. Okay, go ahead, explore around, show me what you've learned. Okay, I cannot wait to see. I'm really excited to see what you guys learn. This is one of my favorite things to kind of learn about and discuss with my students because I think it's really important. It's kind of one of those topics that tells us a lot about the world around us, and it's kind of a problem-solving topic which I love. Again, it can seem a little sad at times because it seems like humans are causing a lot of problems, but it's always important to remember that humans, yes, cause problems, but humans are also the solution, okay? So I hope you learn a lot, and I hope you find a way to be part of the solution later on in life, okay? I will see you guys later. I can't wait to see all that you learn and put it in my shout out video. Bye, everyone.